In the quiet north end of Fernfield County, where dense pine woods swallow the edges of old farmland, and the nearest neighbor might be a mile down a dirt road, stories linger longer than people. Folks around there say the wind carries the secrets, and in the winter of 1998, the wind carried the name of a man no one had thought about in years. His name was Thomas Calder, a reclusive loner, better known to locals as the Hermit of Willow Creek. This story is about a man who lived silently in the woods until the day silence broke. Fernfield was the kind of rural town where everyone knew each other's trucks, dogs, and even last names. But Thomas Calder didn't fit that picture. He lived in a collapsing cabin deep off in Willow Creek Road, 2 miles past where the pavement ended. There was no electricity, no phone. No one saw him in town more than a handful of times a year. Most people assumed he just wanted to be left alone. Thomas had moved there in the early 80s, buying the cabin after a brief stint working odd jobs around town. Locals described him as quiet, peculiar, but harmless, and had eyes that looked through you. They almost, pierced through you. Nobody invited him to barbecues or church picnics, and he didn't seem to mind. He trapped his own food, grew a meager garden, and walked familiar trails like a ghost. By the 90s, most folks had simply forgotten he was even out there. That's when it happened, the first disappearance. It didn't bring much alarms, but in 1994, a hiker named Andrea Bell, who was 27, was last seen pulling off Highway 12 in a faded red Subaru. She told friends she wanted a weekend alone with nature. Police combed parts of the forest but found nothing. No campsites, no clothing, not even a tire rack. A year later, a teenage runaway named Rick Tanner, who was 16, vanished on his way through Fernfield. He was last seen at a gas station buying trail mix and a map of the local parks. Again, investigators assumed he'd fled further west. It took the third disappearance of Ellen Marsh, 42 years old, dog trainer. Her dog returned home without her. This made the town panic. Her truck was found on a logging road not far from Willow Creek. That's when the sheriff's department expanded its search deeper into the woods and towards Thomas Calder's property. On January 16, 1998, with temperatures dropping below freezing, deputies and volunteers started canvassing miles of forest. Locals knew that only 2 people lived anywhere near that section of the woods. One was Thomas Calder, and the second was no one else. Deputies reached the cabin just after dusk. It looked abandoned. The windows were cracked and the roof was sagging under wet snow. The smokeless chimney made it seem like no one lived there, but there were footprints in the slush, fresh ones. When they knocked, no one answered. Then, Deputy Marlon Graves noticed something strange. A length of rope tied to a tree behind the cabin, disappearing down a slope. At the end of that rope was a crude wooden trapdoor, half camouflaged with pine branches. Beneath it was a cellar. When investigators pulled open the trap door, the smell hit them first: damp earth, rot, and something else. The cellar was deeper than it should have been, dug out far below the cabin's foundation, reinforced with lumber and covered in old tarps to muffle sound. They followed a narrow hallway until they reached a room lit by battery-operated lanterns. And there, they found two things. One was a wall lined with personal items: a red Subaru key fob, a dog collar, a teenager's denim jacket, and several photographs of people who were never reported missing. The second thing was a journal. Inside the journal, entries dated back to more than 10 years. Calder had written about visitors, about people who would wander too close. He described trapping them, talking to them, studying them, before the entries abruptly stopped mentioning them at all. Most chilling was a repeated phrase in shaky handwriting: "They don't leave the woods." It was clear to investigators they had found the workroom of a long, active killer. But what they didn't find were bodies. Authorities issued a countrywide alert for Thomas Calder the same night. Volunteers, deputies, and state troopers combed the woods in teams. They checked hunting blinds, collapsed barns, and abandoned trailers. They found unspent rounds, half-eaten rations, and makeshift campsites. Thomas was close, too close. On the fourth day of the search, a trooper spotted movement near a ravine. The figure bolted into the trees, tall, weary, wearing a dirt-stained coat. The chase lasted 20 minutes before the man disappeared behind a rock bluff. For a moment, it seemed he had simply vanished. Then, a faint cracking sound echoed across the ravine. The troopers reached the edge and saw what happened. Thomas Calder had slipped on ice and had fallen nearly 30 feet. He died instantly, and the manhunt was over. But the case was not. Where were the bodies? Where did he put the bodies? That's what the police wanted to know now. So over the next 6 months, investigators brought in cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and forensic teams. They mapped the woods like a grid. They dug through old well shafts, sinkholes, and abandoned mines. They found traces of bone fragments burned in the fire pits, buttons and shoelace hardware, and a single cracked tooth belonging to Andrea Bell. Torn fabric matching Rick Tanner's jacket, but they never recovered complete remains. Experts eventually concluded that Calder had used the forest itself as his accomplice. Scavengers and erosions, water flow, and time had nearly erased his crimes. Thomas Calder was officially connected to at least 6 disappearances, though investigators suspect the real number was much higher, possibly a dozen or more over 15 years. Fernfield doesn't talk about Thomas Calder much anymore. The cabin was torn down, the cellar filled in, trees grew back over the old paths, and they covered the scars that once ran deep. But those who lived in the area during the 90s still remember the unease, the lingering fear that someone could be so close, so quiet, and so unseen. Some locals say his spirit still walks the woods, keeping watch over the place he once haunted. Others say that's just superstition, but almost everyone agrees on one thing. You don't wander too close to Willow Creek after dark. Not anymore.